Hello, my name is Dr. Deshawn Chapman. This spring, I had the opportunity to co-edit a book with a colleague, Dr. Amanda Wilkerson, entitled From Student to Scholar, Mentoring Underrepresented Scholars in the Academy. This book sheds light on the lived experiences of underrepresented scholars as they transition from doctoral students into their professional roles as faculty members and administrators. In the work, we also examine mentoring as a critical source of support for career advancement related to diversifying higher education. So today, I am joined by four scholars who authored chapters in the book. Dr. Tia Dumas, Dr. Irina Walker, Dr. Jessica Martin, and Dr. Kimberly Harrell. We are here to contextualize mentoring by discussing their experiences. And the theme for our conversation tonight is, can your mentor be your tormentor? So welcome, ladies. Thank you for volunteering to spend your time and coming and have this conversation with me tonight regarding your contribution to this book. So I just want to start by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us why you felt like it was important for you to contribute your experiences to student to scholar mentoring underrepresented scholars in the academy. Irina, we'll start with you.
Hello again, everyone. My name is Dr. Irina Walker. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Northern Iowa in the College of Education. And the reason I felt like I needed to contribute to this book is because in reading the book and just outside of the book, I realized that doctoral students, especially doc students of color, their experiences are different than their peers, primarily their white peers. And so that was not the case for me. So it was really like twofold why I wanted to contribute for the doctoral students, to let them know that everyone experiences are not negative, that you can have great mentors and you can have people who are behind you and support you, but also for the mentors, the advisors, to let them know and to show them how impactful their mentorship is. It was great for me. My mentor and my mentors, they were great advisors, and they really supported me. And so I really wanted to, like I say, twofold, show from the scholar, from the student perspective, but also for the advisor, to show them how impactful their mentorship can be for their doctoral students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I am Dr. Jessica Martin. I am an assistant professor and coordinator of the clinical mental health counseling program at Lamar University in Texas. And one of the reasons it was important for me to be a part of the book is to normalize some of the experiences that other doc students are going through. Something that really stuck out to me while I was in my program, especially when I became a home scholar, was that it felt like a lot of the experiences were siloed to just us counselor ed students. And then being a part of home scholars, and then having just not even just home scholars at my university, but just across the nation, that we all were having the same issues and we were having the same experiences. And there's something comforting in that, knowing that it's not just a me issue, it's a universal issue. And so part of my impetus for writing this chapter was, one, to just talk about, you're not alone. Like, this is not a one and done issue. This is not something that's happening to you. But then also, one of the things that I think I was really probably known for is going against the grain. And I wanted to let people know that you can push against the grain and you can still be very successful with your program.
Awesome.
Hi, I am Dr. Kim Harrell, and I am an assistant professor in the Department of Otolaryngology and Communicative Disorders at the University of Louisville. I really wanted to write my chapter to show resilience. to just talk about, when you get in a situation and you think that you're not going to be able to get done, and when everybody pretty much just kind of, writes you off and leave you, to yourself, that you still can, you can still make it out. You can still get done. Of course, with the help of having good mentors, and then also just showing that your mentor doesn't necessarily have to be in your field, in your college, or even in your department. Because, as most of you know, the person who got me out, was not in my field, not even in my department, somebody totally different. But just to be able to show that, you still have a community. You can, find and establish your community there, and then they can assist you with, with getting out. And so just because, everybody else walks away, like I said, everybody else kind of writes you off, you still can get done. You have to be resilient. You have to be persistent, and you can still get finished.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Tia Dumas. I am the Assistant Dean for Professional Development and Inclusive Excellence in the Graduate School at Clemson University. I'm also a Provost Fellow in the Office of the Provost. And I echo what has been said already. I think there's aspects of each of the reasons or the purpose of feeling like you can make a contribution to this wonderful, wonderful edited book. I personally think that there's something to be said about just honoring those who have come before you. And for me, I really wanted to honor all of those scholars that came before me by saying, here's my contribution. Here's how we can continue to tell the story. Here is a way of saying maybe perhaps thank you to those who did mentor me. In my particular chapter, I think I was really referencing my own personal experiences, which is in some ways very cathartic to be able to write the process, to name things and call a thing. And you're able to maybe do that in hindsight. And at the same time, to be able to discuss systems of mentoring and constellations of support, and how important the systems really are to an individual's success. So I echo what has been said. And for me, those were some of the reasons I chose to contribute.
Well, you all made very valuable contributions. And while I can't share everything about your awesome chapters here, we can start to dig a little bit more into what you wrote. So can you talk to us about maybe your expectations of what mentorship in the academy would be versus what you received as either a doctoral student, faculty member, or administrator at any point in your journey in the academy?
Well, I can maybe just start us off a little bit here. I think I was a former student athlete, so I had sort of ideas and some conceptions about mentoring as it relates to coaching, and the amount of rigor and consistency and striving for excellence on a regular basis. Having played in what is now a Power 5 and a D1 school, we're striving for excellence every single day. And so coming into an academic environment with that kind of training and that lens as it relates to coaching and mentoring didn't square up in the academy. I did not receive that hands-on training consistently, striving for excellence. It was discussed and it was expected of me, but there wasn't a game plan for how to get there. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't quite, and this is of course in hindsight, moving into my doctoral program, I think I might've been influenced by movies or maybe some books I'd read, or, maybe what some of my friends had told me who may have started the doctoral program. I really didn't know too many individuals who ever started or finished. So for me, it was more about, get in, put your head down, get the work done. There wasn't a lot of conversation about mentoring, how to find mentorship, how to identify excellent mentorship, and how that differs from maybe not such great mentorship. Are there differences between advising, coaching, and mentoring? So for me, I came in with more of the maybe a coaching mindset. And that definitely changed throughout my program.
I would echo that a lot. I think a lot of it was coming in and I had this assumption that coming into a doc program was very similar to my bachelor's and my master's. Even in my bachelor's, I had professors who were just my backbone. Like they really pushed me. They even pushed me to do a master's because that was never part of my game plan. When I did my master's, I did it at a HBCU. And so there's so much love and support, and just the environment invites you to continue to move forward. So when I got to my PhD program, I realized it was like, hi, welcome. And then everything just kind of fell off, and you didn't talk to anybody, you didn't hear anything. And that was it threw me off. I guess, because again, kind of like what T was saying, it's a little bit of expected. You expect there's that support's going to be there. And now that you bring that up, I'm not sure why I thought it was supposed to look a certain way. I don't know where that thought came from, and maybe it was from previous experiences, or maybe that's the mindset that said, oh, if it was me, that's what I would do. And that was the big struggle for me, was that it's like when I met a professor at a conference, and she frequently talks about the hidden curriculum. And that to me is like the big overarching theme of my entire doc program, was that unlike some of my colleagues, I didn't get the hidden curriculum. And therefore, I didn't understand what mentors was supposed to look like. I thought my professors were supposed to be my mentors. And it took probably almost into my dissertation for me to realize that there was a difference between someone who would support me and mentor me versus someone who was simply just teaching me.
Tia's comment about where we might have gotten these ideas of what it would look like took me back to a different world. I thought every professor was just gonna like love on me and pull me in, keep me after class, give me extra readings, like be so heavily invested. But what you mentioned about knowing the difference between a professor, someone who's just going to give advice versus someone who's actually going to pull you in and mentor, I think is very, very important.
Yeah, and I think sometimes.
And I think.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kim.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, sometimes too, I think that, we, depending on where we go, like everybody's been saying, when you're in your undergraduate program, you're in your graduate program, you have certain experiences and you think that they're going to roll over. But I think for us, sometimes, unfortunately, you don't realize that it's not that way until it's too late. It's like, at the end, you realize, oh my gosh, I've spent all this time, these last 2.5 years in this relationship with you, and this like isn't working. Like, this isn't good. You don't love me the way I thought that, that you did. Because it is kind of like a relationship. And sometimes, like I said, you don't realize until you get to the end, and then you realize, oh, well, this is what mentoring is, and this is what just being my, advisor is, and this is what just being my, instructor is. But like I said, at that point, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Because it's almost like you feel like you've been led astray, for the last couple of years. And now you're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we fix this? How do I get what I need, at this point?
Yes, I agree. Jessica, you mentioned something that's so key. And I often have this conversation with individuals. I too graduated from an HBCU. And so, you have that, it always felt like, I'm sorry, y'all, hold on. Always felt like at an HBCU, it wasn't like you were a student, you were actually there, like their child. So, they had that love for you and you knew it was there, opposed to, when I arrived at UCF, I knew the love was there from my advisor, but then at the same sense, I was right over here at the same sense, I was kind of alone, and I was the only individual in my program. There was no one else in my cohort except for me. So on top of, not having anyone to, walk you through, and Tia, you mentioned those extra readings, it was just me. So I really felt like I was in, this silo, and it's like, what did I do? Did I make the right decision? So, and plenty of days of crying.
I think that sometimes when you're alone and having those experiences, particularly at the beginning, and you're battling with this hidden curriculum, these invisible rules, these standards, these that you need to achieve in order to be successful, that you just don't know anything about. When you're dealing with that stuff, sometimes you have these experiences with instructors or advisors or professors where they are incredibly supportive, but other times their actions are more like a tormentor. So can you all provide us of an example of an experience that you may have had with someone as a tormentor or a supporter, but how you use that lesson that came out of that experience in order to move forward?
I can say for me, it was my first semester. And like I said, it was already, I felt alone. But I had an instructor, of course, I won't mention his name. And I felt like I was singled out. And this instructor, I did not do well on a paper. And I felt like the instructor intentionally, and I won't give too many details, but I felt as though the instructor intentionally graded me the way that he did because he was trying to prove a purpose. And so I'll never forget, and I mean, I could share it now because I graduated, but in that course, I made a C. And you all know in the PhD program, you cannot, well, at UCF, it's 2 C's that you can make and you're done. And so I will never forget, like I was just, when grades came out, I cried. I mean, I cried like a baby. And, I had gone to this instructor, I had a conversation with him, this faculty, and he was just like, nope, and it just, I just couldn't believe that he could be so dismissive towards me. And so I'll never forget that next semester. So it was the fall semester and we were going into the spring semester. And it was the faculty meeting that they have. They have one in the fall, one in the spring. And I remember I was trying to duck and dodge my advisor because I did not want him to see me because I knew that he knew what grade I had received. And so he told me, he said, let's have a conversation after the meeting. And when I tell you all, I was just like, oh my goodness, he's going to feel like he made a terrible decision bringing me into the program. And, we went in his office and we talked about the course and, what the instructor had given me. And I'll never forget, he said to me, he said, well, and I cried in his office. I said, I can't believe I cried. He said, well, pull yourself together and prove him wrong. And when he said that, it was at that moment that I knew, although I didn't have him there every day and, my advisor, that is, and giving me, going back to folks providing you with readings and being there for you every day, I knew that he was always there for me. He probably wasn't always there, but I knew if I needed him, he would be there for me. And when he said to me, well, prove him wrong, at that semester, I mean, it was just like night and day. So that was really hard for me with that instructor. And after that, it was that was the last time I experienced that because my advisor, mentor said, that's what he gave you. That's what he said. Now you prove him wrong. And I was determined to do that.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
Well, I think I could talk maybe a little bit, and I alluded to this in the chapter, but I'm not sure if I would call it benign neglect. But there's something to be said about the lack of support by way of not providing any support or guidance because you are already doing great. So I don't know, I don't have the language for it right now, but in some of my experiences, if I was doing well, then there was a little bit of a, you got it, you're fine. You don't need any additional support or resources. You seem to be navigating okay. Now, of course, that was an assumption because there was never a question about how are you? How are things going? Tell me about experiences, especially when you don't know what questions to ask.
Right.
Then, I've learned, and perhaps it's some, to say, is there something that I should be asking that I'm not asking? Is, as those are cues. And so I can't say that I outright had a tormentor. But I can say that there were individuals at times throughout my program where there had been maybe some benign neglect. Mm-hmm. And that means that you may not be aware of resources or opportunities. You're not asking about them because you really don't know that they exist. And they're not also being presented because you may not meet the criteria that a faculty member has established for what seems to be a student needing support. And so we're walking that line of, as a woman of color, as a Black woman, trying to carry on like, I know what I'm doing. I have to show up. I have to, act like I'm confident, even when I'm not confident, get into that room, be at the table, don't be on the menu. You're trying to navigate so many spaces and identities. And at the same time, someone might be getting the impression that you do have it all together. Therefore, you don't need any additional support. So there might be some experiences where I've had where that came into play, not so much just a tormentor overtly misbehaving and engaging in egregious acts, but those that actually are not engaging at all, which I think can be just as egregious.
You bring up a great point. In a few of the chapters, individuals talked about how in the absence of those formal mentoring structures that are able to, cultivate all students and not weed students out, students are put in the position to have to advocate for themselves, to have to find mentors for themselves. So when you don't know what you don't know, how do you find out what you need to know to be successful? How have you all grappled with that in any role that you've had in academia?
I think for me, even when I was starting my PhD program, there was one other African-American person who it's only been two of us that actually completed our PhD program. The only two that ever come through the program, period, because the program they have now changed their program, so they don't have the PhD program anymore. They're revamping it. Mm-hmm. But she was there before me, and she was kind of the person that was my guide. She was actually how I found out about the PhD program. And so, she told me, and when we first started talking, she didn't tell me about the things that happened to her. And later on, because I was kind of like, when we would have conversations later on, I was like, yo, you should have told me, like, I could have saved like a lot of time. But but her thing was, she didn't know if I was going to have the same exact experience, or she didn't want to taint, the picture if that wasn't going to happen to me. And I could respect that. Because honestly, the first 2.5, 3 years of my program were great. I didn't have any issues, everything didn't hit the fan until later on. And so, but even now, she and I, are very good friends. We do a lot of work together. We collaborate a lot together. But she has kind of been she's definitely the person that I leaned on when things got crazy in the end, because at the end, the same thing that happened to her ended up happening to me, the same exact thing. And so we really had the same exact experience with the same exact person. And so that was kind of something that kind of bonded us together, because like I said, now we're able to collaborate and do a lot of work, because pretty much nobody in that department really has anything to do with us, at this point. So we're really just kind of out there. A lot of the other students that have come, before us and behind me, who were white, are now, they're collaborating with this certain professor. She's put them on to all of these different committees, and they're doing all this stuff. And me and, and my colleague, we're just like, hey, we're good. We're over here, we're making it. She's been in a couple of different institutions. So she's really, I don't officially like call her my mentor, but she's kind of been somebody who has been mentoring me, just even with, negotiating things with the new job, some of the other different things that I've been working on and trying to be a part of. She's really been the person that I've gone to and really leaned on. And she was a home scholar as well. And so I've really learned to rely on her. And then even just some of the other scholars, that we went to school with, I've, turned to me, that has been, my academic family. Those are the people I go to first for anything. I talk to Jessica all the time, and I'm always, bringing stuff to her, and, in a certain way, she kind of mentors me. And so I think that, I personally have just learned to just kind of depend on those people. Some of the people who went through the same thing, I think it's easier to relate, and have conversations with people that know what you've been through. They've been through some of those same things, and they're also, excelling now, regardless of, the experiences that they had.
And that's why, Kim, anyone who comes, through the program, UCF or any program, I encourage them, if there is a home scholars on your campus, get involved, because having that support system, even, when I, got my job, remember I called you and I was like, what should I say? Remember, so it's just having that support. And then, other folks, Deshaun, just having that support there, it means a lot. And so I encourage people, get into homeschool. And everyone I've spoken to, they have said how, because that's what was told to me before I got into the program. He said, Irina, if you don't do anything else, you need to contact Dr. Hop and you need to get in home scholar. And I'm so grateful that I did.
And you know what? It's so crazy because nobody in my department never said anything about home scholars. Like, I found out about home scholars through that first research class that we did with that certain person. And then, Jessica, why are you laughing? And then that's how I found out about home scholars. So I wasn't even in the situation, and I didn't better. But now, looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, they didn't tell me about McKnight. They didn't tell me about home scholar. There was so much stuff. And at the point, I was just so green, I didn't even realize it. I didn't realize that there was stuff I didn't know until, once I got to the end, and I just had a whole list of stuff that, that they didn't tell me, or stuff that they didn't do. But, and I always tell people, all the time, like, home scholar is the reason I graduated. Because if home scholar had not been there, if Dr. Hop had not been there, then I would still be somewhere, ABD, in the shower, curled up, crying, just going through.
I think, again, we're highlighting the different networks of support that people that you find and get you through. I hear in this conversation and in the book a lot about peer mentoring, or mentoring as having a role model, being a critical friend, and how all of those things help to get us through the process. I think in those roles, that peer mentoring role, that critical friend role, as well as formal mentor-mentee relationships, that mentoring can be a two-way street. And I think that, all of you all are now in administrative or faculty positions. So you may have mentors, but you're also may have mentees. So what advice can you give for a mentee? How do they posture themselves to maximize that relationship? Or on the other hand, what are some things that a mentor should be looking at in order to maximize that relationship?
I think, and just kind of piggybacking on what Kim was talking about, that part of that two-way street is being open and available. So within my cohort, we had actually 4 Black women. And the first question we started asking ourselves was, well, where are the graduates? Like, where are the Black graduates who came before us? We would go, our department is pretty well known, and so they would have these big fancy receptions at conferences, and they had a big network, and we would meet all of these alumni, and none of them were Black. And I was like, well, I know Black people graduated from here, so where are they? And that was part of our beginning, was like, we actively sought out the Black alumni, because we were like, we know you exist, but we can't find you. And what we learned in that process was that Black alumni felt alienated by the program. And so when it came to having events and having receptions, they just never came around. So we didn't even get an opportunity to ask them the kind of questions like we would want to ask someone who's already been there, because they were so jaded, so jilted by the whole process that they just didn't want anything to do with our program. So when we graduated, we made an active decision to show up to receptions so that we could meet the new students and we could introduce ourselves, and we could say, when you want to talk, and you'll know, here I am, come and see me, come talk to me. We can talk about these things. Because one of the things, just like Kim said, the people who are in the cohorts directly above me, they didn't say anything about some of the experiences because they said they didn't want to taint our experience. But what we found out was that everybody had the same experience. I'll even take it a step further. My department chair, also graduated from the same department. And we literally can finish each other's sentences when we talk about experiences. So she is tenured, been, out of the program multiple years. And she can mirror my experience. So knowing that this is a generational issue, it keeps coming cohort after cohort after cohort. And so finally, we made the active decision that we have to be the ones who break that system and say, look, I'm going to tell you what they're going to say, and I'm going to tell you that that's not right, and I'm going to tell you that you need to do this, and they're going to say do this, because that's the only way. So I feel like in that regard, some of it is showing up, either as a mentor or as a mentee. It's just being there and being present, because we have to make ourselves available so that they know who we are. And, even though, yes, when I left the program, I was very jilted. I was very jaded. But I realized that it wasn't about me anymore. It's about them. I've had time to work my stuff out. I'm a counselor. I go through counseling, and that was stuff I had to work out. But I also realized that part of working that out too was saying, I can't let someone else go through the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's part of it, is kind of working through my own stuff to be a support to someone else.
That's huge.
And just even when Jessica talking about working out your own stuff, I remember when I first graduated, I was in therapy. I was in therapy for a while, because just the way that everything went down, I just had a lot of trauma, and then stuff that was triggered by, people that were representative of the people who were in my department. They weren't the same exact person, but they could say something to me and I would have a flashback and I would just lose it. And so, I had to, just like Jessica knew that there was not going to be anyone coming behind me at my program at UCF, but there were going to be others at other programs at other universities. And I know that I wanted to be a mentor to them. And so I felt like I had to get past my trauma. I couldn't even talk about some of the things that happened for a long time without just bursting into tears, and just having a total meltdown. So it's like, okay, I've got to get myself together first. And then I've got to go out there and make sure that, I can help somebody else that may be experiencing the same thing, not in my particular program, but still just experiencing the same thing. And even when you're being a mentee, I think one of the things that you have to do, you have to be open, and you have to be receptive to what's being given to you. And so you have to definitely, make yourself available. You have to listen. I think that's the big thing. You have to listen. And that was one thing I learned. I think, after a while, I became really good. I sought out, information. I sought out people, and then I just listened. And I think that's one thing that you really have to do. You have to realize that, what, I don't have all the answers. It's okay that I don't have all the answers, but I need to listen to somebody who may have some of those answers for me.
I think that's excellent, Kim. I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's when I think about mentoring relationships that I have today, that I've had for years, it is asking for help, really being open and saying, I need help. And sometimes I don't even know what help it is. So can I talk to you about my situation? And maybe there will be a vector of, information. Like there's so much going on. I don't actually know where I really need the help. And so I've learned over time that I have to say, I got so much going on. I need some help. I need you to figure out where I need the help. At the same time, I'm thinking about students that come to me and ask for me to be a mentor, which is sometimes odd. Like, hey, can you be my mentor? And I'm, well, let's back this up a little bit. And so we start talking about those constellations of support. And I think that's something I did reference in the book was different individuals provide different kinds of guidance, whether that's my spiritual guidance, that's guidance around my Blackness, that's guidance about my being a Black woman, that's my guidance around, being a scholar, and then how being a mentor or being a coach or being an advisor, which are all for me different things, helps me then modulate and protect my energy, protect my spirit. So as I'm thinking about the ways that students are approaching me, or colleagues for that matter, I have to be able to say, I want to help so much. I know for myself, I love to help. And sometimes I don't protect my energy, and then that manifests itself in the relationships I have with others in ways I did not want to have happen. So for me, part of that is, yes, I can commit to helping you with these things. And so if it's helping you with navigating the politics in your department, that's one thing I can help with. But there might be some other challenges you're facing. I'm not going to be able to commit to helping you there. That you might want to identify someone else that could help you in that area. That also helps the mentee then know that, one, there's a constellation, a network that you are building and customizing for yourself. But as a mentor too, that means I'm not going to get burnt out helping you. And I want to help you. I want to give you my very best. And so it's a little bit of that self-care, challenging and supporting and protecting your energy and your spirit, because we all know we got folks wanting to take our spirit apart on a regular basis. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about from the two-way street. I do think it's a two-way street.
So what I'm hearing so far, a couple of nuggets that our audience can take away, is to seek out alumni who may have had common experiences, to be available to support others who may have come along a path that you've already journeyed down, to process your own experiences so that you can get to a place where you are able and available to help others, to be open and receptive to the opportunities that are available, and to listen, to not be afraid to ask for help, to know that different individuals present different opportunities for support, that someone may not be a one-stop shop, right? Seek out different people, build a team around yourself to achieve your goals, and to use wisdom in being a mentor so that you help people in ways that are appropriate for you and that you protect your energy. To wrap up, I want to ask one last question. Considering the disparities that we're seeing in our nation right now around race and income, around healthcare, how do you relate your experiences with mentoring and this conversation to what's happening in the world right now? Why is this significant, or why is this conversation timely for this place that we find ourselves?
I think it's very timely. I'm not sure if you guys, if you were on Twitter and you were following Black in the Ivory, and some of the stuff they were saying, it was like, oh my gosh, it's almost as if every Black person that has a doctorate, no matter where they are in the United States, went through the same exact foolishness. And I'm like, this has to be crazy. But I think this conversation is I think it's so right on time, because there are a lot of other Black students who were in doc programs now who were coming up behind us that are going to face maybe stuff that we didn't even face. Because even though we're having the conversation, everybody says that they're an ally and they want to help. But I think that the heat is about to go on, it's about to go up for a lot of students that are going to be coming behind us. And I think that they're going to catch stuff that we didn't catch. And I think it's really important for us, to really make sure that we're stepping up and that we're reaching out and helping those students as much as possible. Because I honestly do not, in my heart, I would like to believe that things are going to change, but there's a part of me that does not believe it's going to change. It's just going to get worse for a lot of students. And I feel like, when we, now is the time for us to really get it together, to really figure out what we can do to help those students that are going to be coming behind us. Because when I was looking at some of the things that they were saying, I was just like, we're in 2020, like, why is this still happening? Why are people still saying this? Like, who really actually says that to another person? And so I think it was really a wake-up call, for us that are on the other side. It's like, okay, what do we need to do to help? Because I think at the end of the day, it's always our responsibility to help those who are coming behind us. Right. However, you have one student. I have about 6 students that, between master's students and PhD students that I mentor now. It takes up a heck of a lot of time. It really does. But I'm like, it is what it is, because somebody, sacrificed some time for me. And so I feel like, I cap it off at 6 because I'm like, I got to, take care of myself. So this is like this is like it. But, for me, I really don't care, because I feel like, somebody sacrificed so much. I remember there were so many times where I have called, Dr. Hop. And, she's been on the phone with my parents and, just all times of the night. But, she made that, effort. She made that sacrifice, to do those things. And I feel like, I'm in a situation now. I'm on the other side. I'm in a better place mentally, to have those conversations and to talk about what I went through and to really help. And I feel like that's where we are now. I feel like, this is our wake up call. This is what's going on. And I think that, the students coming behind us are going to need us now more than they ever have.
Amen.
I think there's 2 things that kind of come up for me when you bring that up. And the first one is, as Black faculty, now is the time to start speaking out more. And I say that in that there have been so many times where there are things that needed to be said, like immediately in the room when they were happening, and no one said anything because there was always that fear that someone's going to retaliate against me or someone's going to think I'm the angry Black woman at the table. But then after a while, and Kim has heard all of my stories, at some point I have to realize that I was like, one, I'm sitting at the table with the same degree, if not more, than everyone else at the table. I have the same knowledge, if not more, than all those at the table. And there's no longer a place or a space for me to continue to be quiet. I have to call these things out. I have to call out anything that's unjust for myself, for my students, whatever that looks like, because if I don't, they're going to continue. And I think we're in a place now as a society and a group where people are starting to hear it and starting to say, yeah, I see that. I see that problem. That is problematic. The second part of it, and this is something that we don't really talk much about, but it's very important to me, is to recognize that we do have true non-Black allies. They're now, granted, there are some false ones out there, but we have some true, real allies who are out there to be there and to be supportive, and even more so now. I think more so now than ever before. One of the things I talked about in my chapter is my dissertation chair, who was amazing to me. At no point did I think that the person who was going to truly support me in my process was going to be a white Canadian man. But he taught me a lot, and he taught me about using my voice. He was the first person who told me I was a good writer. He was the first person who, when I joined dissertation committees, was like, Jessica Martin is the expert. So having that has been amazing for my journey and my time as I'm going through. And so I think that those are kind of the two takeaways from like what's going on now, is that we need to have more voice, and we also need to really tap into those allies, because I don't think that we should be doing all the work by ourselves. This isn't our job.
Yeah, I totally agree with the two of you. In addition to being there for students, our Black students, but also in the classroom, our students of color, but also in the classroom, not being afraid to correct students, white or Black, but correct students when they say something, when they make inaccurate remarks, or when they say something that is not right, or when they make comments that are racist. I have had students very recently, had a student to say, it was around the time when the George Floyd, everything was going on, and I knew for me as a faculty of color, I could not address that in my classroom.
Right.
But I had a student that said to me, I don't understand why is this important? Why do we need to talk about race? Yes, I don't understand. And so, the professional that I am, I just kind of, but I had and before I could even say anything, one of these students of color, she just chimed in, she just went in, but not being afraid when you have students who made such remarks, not being afraid to correct them, not being afraid to let them know, okay, this is why we should have this, that, and other. So what the student did, the student of color, when this young lady made that remark, we were virtual, of course. And so it happened that it was her great nephew, and he was home with her. And so she asked the little boy, she said, and we're having class, all of my students are there. And she asked the little boy to come here. And she put him in front of the camera, introduced. We all thought hi, he's so cute. And so she asked him, she said, let's say his name was Johnny. What do you think about the police? And this kid was 5 years old. He's 5 years old. And little Black boy, he said, I think they're dirty and I'm afraid of them. Those were his exact words. And so I then looked at the class, and I did not address it directly to her. I said, and that is why these conversations are important, because you are a future educator, and the idea or the thought that you do not think it is important to have these conversations, of course, you will address the topic differently with a 5-year-old than you would a 15-year-old, of course. But the mere fact that you do not think that it is necessary for us to have these conversations, that is a problem. So I think not being afraid to address students when they make statements like that, because they are future, they are educating our children. So that was a big takeaway for me. And then also just being there for the students of color on campus, letting them know, hey, my office is here. And I've had several students of color say to me, I did not even know that we had a Black faculty, and like they just stood there. And so, I said to them, yes, and I'm here, and here's my card, and don't be afraid to reach out to me. And if you need, and when they see me, it's always, hey, they have conversations. So, not being afraid to address those and need to be addressed, but then also being there for students and students of color and letting them know that you're there.
That was beautiful, Irina. I'm thinking to myself how this conversation is never not timely from my perspective, right? I mean, it's only going to be if timelier, if anything. I mean, it's always timely. And one thing that I'm thinking about as it relates to the mentoring is how much I need the younger generation. I need the younger generation. It's not just for me that, what we do as those who have on the other side of this, we need the younger generation. We need the multi-ethnic, multiracial population of students who are identifying in ways with language and identities that have always existed, but maybe we didn't have names or language to use. I'm also thinking about those international students who have been contacting me, who are trying to better understand what Blackness means globally and the ways that we are working with our students around Blackness. So I think this conversation it's just very fulfilling for me spiritually and emotionally and mentally right now. But I am also thinking about those other identities and how much we need the younger generation. We need their conversations. We need that, because that's knowledge, that's experience, that's capital that helps us, the older generation, build agency in ways that we haven't had. So we need one another. We need one another.
Thank you all for your comments and for this rich conversation tonight. I just want to take a moment to hold space and recognize and acknowledge the way you all are doing the work, not your jobs, but showing up for the work. I think it's very powerful. I'm very excited about the way that we are all prioritizing mentoring and elevating it in its many forms as a way to make space and to support each other, as well as future generations of scholars who will enter the academy. So thank you for your time tonight. Anyone listening, please pick up Student to Scholars. You will not miss it, and you will enjoy every page of where authors have been courageous enough to share their truth in an effort not to scare folks away or to call folks out, but to say that, it is possible to earn a doctorate degree, to enter faculty and administrative positions, and to do it with excellence. So thank you all for having a conversation with us tonight.